The most dangerous stuff is the stuff that is just like, it's the shut up stuff. It's trying to silence you all the time, so that when you go to say something, you think twice about it, and that is dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
Ha ha, you don't know. Ha ha, you don't know about November the 19th. Ha ha, you don't know about the day when nothing happens. Ha ha, you guys are idiots for not knowing about a thing that I don't give a shit about.
So, as we enter a new decade and fourth wave feminism rapidly falls from fashion, Richard Herring has announced that he will be taking a step back from his twice-annual acts of Twitter pedantry and public shaming, or as the charity he has belatedly dedicated his action to likes to call it, polite trolling. And to mark this monumental moment, the Glass Blind Spot looks back at the top 5 least feminist-friendly jokes in Richard's repertoire that have helped to mould him into the man he is today.
Alright, gentlemen, let's do this.
Oddly, for someone whose name has become synonymous with not one but 2 international days of observance, Richard hasn't always been a fan. In fact, just 12 months before he first started publicly promoting his hardcore feminist credentials, he managed to get himself into a public spat on Twitter after going on a bit of a rant about how much he hated International Women's Day, on International Women's Day, no less. Ironically, at the time he reflected that Twitter was not a place for subtlety or sarcasm, before subtly sarcastically doubling down and proposing that it was the one day of the year where we should treat women as if they were equal. Incredibly, just months later, again in the same year, before he started obsessively hunting down perceived sexist man-babies on Twitter, Richard found himself failing to dig himself out of a rape-shaped hole after fellow feminists Laurie Penny and Owen Jones took him to task over a rehypnol-laced joke from his former weekly column in the Metro. Metro bowed to pressure and removed the offending article, but Richard stood firm and unironically defended his joke about administering a dose of the infamous date rape drug to a female member of his audience, on the basis that the whole point of the joke was that it was specifically about not raping the woman in question. Interestingly, this is exactly the same explanation that UKIP's Carl Benjamin gave the West Midlands Police 5 years later when they investigated him for a possible hate crime after he publicly joked about specifically not wanting to rape a Labour MP, something which led to over 90,000 people signing a petition calling for men who promote sexual violence to be permanently barred from public life.
Oh, I'm Jimmy Savile.
And I'm Jimmy Savile.
And we're running the London Marathon.
I hope nobody dies.
If they do, Bagsy, I take them to the mortuary.
How's about that then, guys and girls?
These days, Richard mostly only ever hits the headlines for his twice-annual Twitter-based antics, but back in the day he used to be part of a BBC comedy duo who were extremely down with the kids, and it's a joke dating all the way back to his commercial heyday that has endured most successfully on the world stage. For the uninitiated, St. Skeletor's Day is an imaginary day dreamed up by Richard, dedicated to the destruction of love, and a day where all the lost, lonely, loveless people get to express their pain about living in a world obsessed with Valentine's cards and romantic love.
St. Skeletor's Day. A festival dedicated to the destruction of love, saucy greeting cards and people with girlfriends.
So, no Valentine's Day gifts for Rich this year then?
Effectively, this makes Richard the patron saint of those poor souls unfortunate enough to be involuntary celibate, or incels as they have become more popularly known. And while some still have sympathy for people whose life experiences have been fundamentally limited by their inability to attract a loving partner, at least at some significant stage in their life, not everyone feels the same. For example, feminist politician Sophie Walker compares incels to ISIS, and a recent global state of hate report has listed them as one of a number of groups that have contributed to a growing threat from far-right terrorism. So thanks for that, Richard. Some feminists believe that a man calling out men for asking about a men's day on a day that's all about women comes pretty close to the dictionary definition of entirely missing the point. And yet probably the most ironic thing about Richard's annual act of excessive virtue signalling is that so many people now talk about International Men's Day on International Women's Day that it trends around the world. But with all that said, probably the least feminist by far of all Richard's surprisingly unfeminist friendly jokes is none other than the one he's told repeatedly about International Men's Day, especially when he tells it on a day that's supposed to be all about men. As feminists will repeatedly remind anyone who's remotely prepared to listen, feminism is about equality, and equality is better for everyone, including men. And while every November some mean-minded people on the internet still behave in exactly the sort of manner that Richard claims to abhor, most feminists have no problem with the concept of setting aside 24 hours of the 8,760 annually available to celebrate men and talk about some of the inequalities and challenges they face, even if their calendar is already pretty full. Feminists publicly embrace International Men's Day a little bit more every single year, which awkwardly for Richard means that every year his long-established track record of hating on International Men's Day, of calling it stupid, unnecessary, and the equivalent of setting aside a day for slave owners, or better still, people without a life-changing illness, just kind of makes him look a little less like a charitable, chivalrous, card-carrying feminist and a lot more like an insufferable, smug, self-promoting dick. Which is why I, for one, celebrate the news that he's finally decided to go and pick on someone else.
Can't you see it too? There's an elephant in the room.